right, everybody, welcome back. We are once again here with Dangerous Doug Gilbert, and we are here for more dangerous conversations with Doug Gilbert. I'm your host, Gene Jackson, and Doug, what have you been hearing about episode 1, man?
Man, what's going on, Gino? I've had a lot of people get with me on social media and ask me a bunch of questions, and a lot of people said they liked it, which I hope everybody likes it, and I'd like for everyone to listen to it. And just same as the USWA podcast. That now, what is actually the USWA? What is that one called, Gene? That
it's
you
the
do?
Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast, where me, Josh Briley, and Richard Mullican go back and review week by week episodes of USWA Wrestling.
Well, that is cool because that is my wrestling right there, and I get a lot of people will shoot me in a lot of different things from that. That's really cool too, and I like to look at it. It's really cool stuff. And I am just happy to be back. And this is episode 2, right? We made it through 1. And like I said, I've got good feedback. So maybe everybody likes us talking and like some of the stories that you're asking me about.
They are. And I'm happy. I knew they would, but there's always that apprehension. You're like, are they going to like it? Or are they going to be like, why did you talk about this? And it's like, there's a lot to talk about, guys. We're not going to be able to hit it all in the first week or two. So,
well, no. And here's the thing, Gene, like me and you talked about just when we was talking with one another, I mean, there's a million different things to talk about, and you're not going to talk about all of them in 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks and everything. But we hope we talk about what everybody wants, but it might not be this week, it might be next week, or it might be the following week. But we're going to talk, I think, as long as people want to listen.
That's right. And, I know folks, they've heard you on things before. They've heard you on, these virtual signings and stuff where you guys are kind of hitting the high spots. You guys are kind of talking in generalizations about a lot of things. But here on the Dangerous Conversations, like I said last week, this isn't, dangerous, interviews. This is conversation. So we're going to dig deep. We're going to get into more detail about things than there's time to do in these shoot interviews and signings where you got to cover a lot of ground at once. We got all the time in the world. Me and Doug's going to be doing this for a while, I hope. And so we're going to, when we get done with these episodes, we don't want you to be like, oh man, I was hoping they would, talk a little more about that, or they would dig a little deeper. No.
And here's the thing, Gene, if we don't hit what you're wanting to know, I mean, they can always shoot you the questions, right? And I will answer what they want, and we'll get it all figured out for everybody. But like I said, there's a million things. Like you said, you go from somebody asking you about point A to 15 seconds later is to point Z. So you leave a lot out in between. But I mean, we'll do the best and go through the years. And like I said, I think you said we might jump from 1 year to the next, or from this year to 4 years. But we're going to go back and we're going to get everything that the people want, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that helps to be able to be free to jump around, because, it's not like, somebody brings something up and we're like, nope, we've moved past that. No, we can jump back to 1988. We can jump ahead to, 2000 and all points in between. It's whatever we want this to be.
Exactly. We want to answer the questions and tell the stories.
So today we're going to start out. I posted this in the USWA group that we've got on Facebook. And thank you to everybody that's joined the Facebook group. Thank you to everybody that's following the Dangerous Conversation. We're up to 700 people following the Dangerous Conversations Facebook page. And we try to post a lot of cool stuff there, from Doug's career and Eddie's career and Mr. Tommy Gilbert's career. And you guys seem to be enjoying that. You're sharing it around, and we appreciate that. And I posted on there that one of my favorite episodes of USWA Wrestling was an episode from January of 1996. And we're going to be talking about that show quite a bit here today. We're even going to be watching a little piece of it. But on that show, the show kicks off with a promo from PG-13, and they let us know that they are going to be challenging you and Tommy Rich for the USWA tag team titles that day. And strangely enough, you and Tommy were good guys at the time. You were the tag team champions, but you were beloved at the time.
How did that ever happen?
Well, if you don't believe us, folks, that is on the YouTube channel. Go check it out. That show is there, and you will see Doug and Tommy as good guys. It's pretty fun.
And I guess I'm talking about how was we beloved, or either how was we the tag team champions? Either one might have been a question in those days.
Take your pick. But the funny thing is, even though you guys were good guys, PG-13 were good guys, you guys were still cross. You know, you guys have been feuding for a couple of years at that point, and things still weren't smooth. Y'all had a little bump in the road. They come out to save you guys from an attack, and there was a couple of miscues there as far as punches being thrown, and the wrong people got hit. And here we are. We're wrestling for the titles today. And you seem to be a little distracted in that match. Something was going on with you. You accidentally hit poor Tommy a couple of different times in that match, which eventually caused PG-13 to get the win, and you guys were now former tag team champions.
Oh, me. It sounded like I was having a bad day that day, didn't it?
You were. It turns out something was on your mind, but we won't find out about that for a little while longer. But again, this was a big episode of the show because you started the show out hot, USWA Tag Team title match. Then the second match on the show is a big battle royal where the winner is going to immediately get a shot at Jerry the King Lawler's USWA Heavyweight Championship. So, and it was quite a star-studded battle royal. Like, this wasn't just a bunch of, like a few of you guys and then some enhancement guys. It's you and Tommy and Brian Christopher. The Rock and Roll Express were there.
It's every bit of the talent that would have been on the loop, and I mean, plus more, like would have been in Memphis, would have been in Louisville, would have been in Evansville. Usually, like when the Rock and Roll wasn't there, when they brought them in, you know, they'd bring them in for a week. Like the week would be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and they usually every Thursday and Friday would be spot shows, but those 4 nights would be those 4 towns. But I mean, I remember what you're talking about, and yeah, it was a big deal and big battle royal, and all the talent was in there, and it was a good deal.
So like we said, we've got all these big stars in this battle royal fighting to get a shot at the title here on television. And wouldn't you know it, the man who comes out on top, the winner of the battle royal, Tommy Wildfire Rich. So then we go right into the title match after a break. And at one point in the match, I don't know if this was accidentally or on purpose, but Tommy has the referee distracted, and all of a sudden, here comes Dangerous Doug coming out of the back, runs over, has a chain wrapped around his fist, knocks out the King. Tommy Rich gets the cover, 1, 2, 3, and Tommy Rich is the brand new USWA Heavyweight Champion. And again, what a TV show! What so much is happening right here. You guys start out at the beginning of the show. Tommy Rich is one half of the beloved USWA Tag Team Champions. 30 minutes into this show, you and him are former tag team champions, and now Tommy is the brand new USWA Heavyweight Champion, but he's certainly not beloved anymore. I would dare say you guys are quite disliked at this point in the program. A lot is going on. What a turn of events here on this show so far.
I think you could say it's action-packed all the way through, Gene, and it was cool, but, I mean, it was good. It wasn't – it's one of those deals where I told you, I mean, you can sit here and talk about it, but it wasn't rolled out, you know, a week before or took 6 hours to write it out. But, man, what a super exciting show it was. And I mean, you was talking a little bit before that, you know, you was talking about the segments in the show, and like you said, as far as the battle royal and the deal with us with the tag titles and not being the champions, and then the deal where I come back out when Tommy's wrestling the King and everything. I mean, there's something in every segment that the people, you know, would bite on.
Yeah, I mean, this was so far. I mean, we've had every part of this show is something that people would have paid money to buy a ticket to at the Mid-South Coliseum or any of the towns.
And what have me and you talked about? I mean, off there, what have I told you? I mean, if you was a bad guy, if you was a heel, you wanted the people to not like you. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, things have changed, and they always are, and they're going to evolve and everything. But in them days, the bad guys didn't want the people to like them. It wasn't like these days, which I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just a different time in the world. But you know, you didn't want to be. I guess you wanted to be a cool dude, but you wanted to be a bad guy. You didn't want to be a cool dude that they liked and everything. You wanted to be a bad guy that the people didn't like, that they would pay money to see you come and for you to get beat. I mean, you know, if you could do that, you was doing your job and doing what you wanted to do.
Absolutely. Heels now are worried that they're not going to be able to sell T-shirts in intermission if they get some real heat. You guys weren't selling T-shirts with your heels.
No, and you've got a great point. And see, I guess, well, no, I would say maybe I look at it wrong now, but no, I mean the merchandising effect is so much different now than it was then, and everything. But still, you want to be still as far as a Southern drawing heel, you had to have heat, and the people had to not like you. I mean, if you wanted to actually be a real heel, you had to be.
So on this show, as all this is transpiring, Tex Slazenger, who's been managed by Scott Bowden, who had managed you guys in the past, Tex turns babyface. He had stole Jerry Lawler's title belts, both his USWA title as well as they had brought in his old Southern heavyweight title belt from back in the day. Same Southern heavyweight title belt that Mr. Tommy Gilbert had lost to Jerry Lawler at one point.
That's exactly right. And that's, I remember him doing that. And that's always been to me, a cool belt. And, it's always meant something. I thought it was just really cool. Like, as far as if you look back at the older belts and stuff, it was one of the first I thought was really cool how it looked and everything.
Yeah, to me, when they brought that belt into that match the week before, it really raised the stakes. I was like, oh, if he can win that belt, that's a whole nother layer to this. But, they had screwed Jerry the week before, and I guess Tex suddenly grew a conscience. I don't know. But suddenly he's out there. He's apologizing. He hands the belts over to Lawler. He and Bowden have words. He ends up, maybe you have some insight on whether or not this was a rib or just an accident, but they have a spot, the old classic spot, where the heel manager gets his pants pulled down. But Tex manages to yank down both Scott's pants and his boxer shorts as well, and Scott immediately drops to the floor in a panic.
Well, I'm sure the boxer shorts was exactly not supposed to come down, but I mean, stuff does happen at times and different things, and things go awry, and that was probably one of them. I'm sure the pants was supposed to come down, but most definitely everything was not supposed to come down.
Poor Lance.
But the cool deal with that, though, Gene, with the good thing with that is that was Memphis wrestling. It wasn't, you couldn't have at some of the greatest stuff that you had. I mean, and everybody else would say, well, it would be a takeaway to be harder because it was live. But I think a lot of that stuff was great because it was live. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it was just, it was, I don't want to say it wasn't thought out. A lot of it was thought out, but I mean, a lot of it was ad-lib, just like me and you were sitting here talking. We ain't scripted what I'm going to say or what you're going to say, but we're going to talk, so you can never tell what I might say. Maybe before I say something too bad, you'll cut me off, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's not
right. And I mean, you have to know this, I'm sure, from all the tape shows that you did over the years. If you do something and something doesn't go well, and they go, hey, let's reshoot that. Let's reshoot that. We kind of talked about this in the first episode a little bit too, but something's lost that second time around when it's not off the cuff and you're going to trying to capture something again. It's never quite the same that second time. No,
you're exactly right. I mean, and see, that was the point of doing things, and with us doing it live for all the years that, we was just used to it being live. I mean, it's a one take thing. You got one shot. Go out there, whether you've got a segment, say 6 minutes or 7 minutes, a promo that's that long, or a short promo than a match or something. But what we're going for is we want to draw money Monday night at the Mid-South Coliseum. And then, the following week, we want to draw money with that in Louisville on Tuesday, Evansville on Wednesday, the spot shows on Thursday and Friday, Nashville on Saturday. And then the next week, whatever that tape is, you want to draw in Louisville, Evansville, Nashville with that tape and everything. I mean, it's all about, and I'd say 90% of the time, 80% of the time after the TV, you would have a feeling we'd kind of watch the show, we'd think about our own stuff, but we'd watch the show, everybody else's stuff too a little bit, and we'd leave and head towards Nashville. me and Eddie, we would talk about it, or me and Tommy, we would talk about it, or whoever was with me at the time. When we left, I'd always say, well, what you think about the show? Or somebody asked me, what do you think about the show? And pretty much most of the time we'd be pretty on what we thought it would do. And if we didn't think it was the greatest, not that it was all for or bad, but when there's a great show, like you said, so much stuff was going on during the show we're talking about right now, when there's that, and when you think there's not too much going on and everything, you think, so maybe it wouldn't draw as much. And every once in a while it would fool you, but you know what I'm saying, as far as
right.
You having a gut about it, what you think it's going to draw on everything.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Wrestling. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Puro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia.
We're going to talk about where this all goes here in a minute. But while we're here, I don't know how often this name's going to come up. Kind of curious to ask you about a couple of people we just mentioned. Tell me a little bit about Tex Slazenger, Dennis Knight. You worked with him some here and there, and tell me a little bit about him. I've heard some good things about him.
Man, Tex was always he was a cool, good dude to me. I liked him and everything. And if I'm not mistaken, which you might be able to tell me more than I know about this topic, but I think his stepdad was Ron Slinker, right? Have you ever heard that?
I've heard that. I have.
See, now my dad and Ron Slinker was really good friends. Did you know that Ron Slinker come through this territory? He was like a karate dude that, he wore like a gi type deal here and everything. He worked here in this territory some. He worked in Florida in that territory. But him and my dad when I was a young kid, was really good friends. And when Tex got here, it seemed like I talked to him a little bit about that and everything. But for some reason, I think Ron was his stepdad maybe and everything. But Tex was he was always nice to me. Me and him really got along and everything. And he was just, man, he paid his dues here and was breaking in the business and everything. But he was always a really nice, pleasant guy.
Yeah, he's one of those guys I've never heard a bad thing about. Like, I've never heard anybody like, man, that guy was a prick. Like, everybody's like, oh, yeah, Tex Slazenger was just a good dude, So it's good to hear that that's the same experience you had.
Yeah, and on Tex one time, me and you was talking about different characters. I think Lawler put him in a Leatherface. Yes. You heard that before? He was.
Yes, we just covered that on another show.
Wasn't he the one that caught on fire or something? Or did Lawler throw fire on him in his thing and he jumped up and down and was
that
going
apron he had caught on fire?
Yeah, and he was doing like this right here to himself, and I thought that was him. Which, bless his heart, here we are talking, laughing about it at the time. He was thinking he was going to burn up, but no, he was, like I said. He was a game player and everything. But he was a good guy. And I'm glad he done good. He wound up going from here to WCW, then WWF, and he done real well, and everybody up there liked him and everything. So, like I said, he was a good, he's a good dude.
So I know we'll talk about him more in the future, but this is why we just mentioned him. Like I said, you guys were managed by Scott Bowden off and on. I always thought that Scott Bowden was one of the, everybody talks about Jimmy Hart was like the best manager in Memphis history, and he probably was, but I feel like Scott doesn't get enough credit for what a good manager he was in the 90s. How did you feel about Scott?
That Scott was, me and Scott was friends, but now that Scott was something else. You talking about a guy that could get himself some heat with everybody. I mean, I'd laugh and everything, but he would get himself in trouble in so many ways. But now you know who his idol was, really, right?
No.
His idol was kind of my brother. And he always, anytime he could get near my brother and talk to my brother, he would go listen. If Eddie would ever stop anywhere to eat in Memphis or whatever, he would go, because for the longest, all Scott did was work Memphis. You know what I mean? He'd work the spot shows around, but he worked Memphis. He went to college in Memphis and everything. But Scott was funny. He was a magnet for heat, and he was trying to get heat on TV. Like I was talking about, the draw money is hell, but a lot of times he would say some of the, it wasn't so bad back in those days about being politically correct, but still Scott would go out of his way to be so it's not even political, just things that you should know not to say on TV. He would say them sometimes. And one day I thought I was going to see Dave Brown kill him. Dave Brown, I can't remember what he said now, but Dave was, you could be a heel and get heat, but you didn't want it to, the wrong kind of, and
I know one word that he said that you could, just me as a fan watching the show, you could tell set Dave Brown off, and you could tell their relationship was never quite the same. And I interviewed Scott when he used the R word,
the slow.
Yes.
And that was,
oh boy.
And Scott knew better, but the only thing, he was, in his mind, he wasn't thinking that it was going to come across to people the way it did. But now Scott was a super smart dude. That's why a lot of people don't know this about Scott, but he's really he's well educated, really smart. But he would try to go out of his way to be a heel and be cocky. And he would say, I'd laugh at him. He'd say some stuff. He'd look at me. He said, "Can you believe they got on me for this?" I said, "Well, yeah, absolutely, Scott. I can believe they got on. Look, you can say this, but you can say A, but you can't say B, or you can't say A and B together." But I said, there's a fine line, and you don't say some things. I said, and if you do say them, here's the things you can say it and it be bad, but that don't draw money. When you say certain things like that, that's just, it turns people off. People say sometimes, "Oh, wrestling is this and that," and you got to, there's psychology and all different, in your promos, in your working, in your angles, and everything, but you can't say, it just, it degrades and lowers what we're trying to do if you start. But and like I said, Scott was a super intelligent dude. And a lot of people don't know that about him. Well educated, good guy. He wound up moving to California and lived out there for years and everything. But he would, he'd put his own foot in his mouth every once in a while.
Because there's a fine line between that, oh my God, we got to go buy tickets to see this guy get his butt kicked, and we're not watching this crap.
And I'm thinking here, I'm sitting here saying this about him, and then some people's watching this saying, "Well, you're a good one to be talking. Look what you said before." and you know what? Y'all are right, but that's why you can never tell what we might get to on here. There's going to be everything will be talked about at some point. But yeah, Scott, the one good thing though, I was out there with these guys, and like I said, I can tell you, but Scott my brother was a big idol to Scott, just like my brother and Lawler both was. And Scott which Eddie would tell him a lot of times, look, he'd say some stuff to Eddie, and Eddie said, "No, don't dare do that," which Eddie tried to keep him out of trouble, but then he'd try to go off cuff and say a few things, and sometimes they turn out good, and every once in a while they'd blast him. Like I said, Dave Brown would blast him, Lawler would blast him, everybody. He would get on blast from everybody, and you might not see him for a week or two, but he'd always be back. I laughed. He was a referee before he was a heel manager. I think it was during
Right.
maybe my brother-in-law's match. I think that's right, Aunt Gina.
That's what I was going to ask, because I knew he'd been a referee, and wasn't it Eddie's idea, or or at least Eddie pushed to get that done, to turn him heel and make him a manager?
Yeah, that's it. And,
which had to mean a lot to Scott. Or if Eddie's his idol, then Eddie's the one that gets his career kicked off as a heel manager. I mean, that had to be like.
Yeah, it did. And like I said, about the second or third week after that, that was when he went on TV, and I can't even, we'd have to pull up to see, but he said something ungodly that we would know not to say that he should have, but he just thought it was going to get him so much heat. And I remember he come to TV that next week, and he wasn't on the TV sheet or nothing. He said, "You think I did something wrong?" I said, "You think?" I said, "Yeah, I'm afraid a little bit you did." But I laughed at him because, they kept him off TV for a couple of weeks, and they put him right back with us. And Scott was cool. And the cool thing, Scott could talk. And like I said, he carried himself well. He's intelligent. He knew what he was talking about. Just he would try to push the limits a little bit, and every once in a while it would go a little far and everything. Then they'd reel him back in.
I found him entertaining is the week after this angle we just talked about, where Tex pulled his pants down. The following week, Scott comes out on TV with this big duffel bag full of mail, and he's like, "Lance, last week was the highest rated episode of USWA Wrestling that ever happened." He said, "And all these folks from the WWF are writing in after seeing my pants pulled down. Like, look at this. We got a letter from Sable. We got a letter from Sonny. We got a letter from Gold Dust." He looked all confused, and Lance's like, "Come on, Scott."
But stuff like that, just off the cuff. And the cool thing is Lance know he's interviewing us, but Lance didn't have to know anything, and most of the stuff Lance was just, that's why he was so great. It was off. I could have not seen him in the studio that morning, and just when they called me out, with Lance, had chemistry with everybody. And Scott, like I said, Scott was really good. Like you said, maybe a lot of people don't know probably how good he was. He was really good. And as far as, he never, like I said, really went on the road with us. He was just for there in Memphis because he went to school there and everything. But man, he was cool. He was good to have with us, like at TV, and like when we did spot shows around Memphis, he was. And he'd watched Hard all the years and everything, and did a lot of stuff. I don't say like Jimmy, but he knew as far as a Southern heel manager how he was supposed to, as far as get heat and the people not like him, and how they didn't. The people hated Hart when he was here. You saw the tapes of all that, and that was just really cool and good stuff.
So after all this transpires, the King comes out. And he's upset. He's lost his title, and he's blaming Tommy, but namely he's blaming you.
I think so. It seemed like I got a lot of blame for most of the stuff, even if I wasn't even there.
Yeah, he was pretty upset with you, and he actually makes a statement. He's like, "Well, Doug's not going to come out here right now," and then Lance goes, "Oh, here he is, he's coming." So let's take a listen right now to this promo. And this is something. There were a couple of things going into this that I really didn't have any explanations for. The King of Rock and Roll, which we talked about last week. So, folks, you can kind of see who's driving the bus as far as these interviews, because now we're on to Gene's next big question, this promo. So, folks, I want you to check this out. Listen to this. We're gonna watch it along with Doug, and then afterwards we're gonna talk all about it. So, let's check this out. This promo from USWA in 1996.
Well, here's a gentleman that can't be too happy about losing the belt, but even more so than that was the way. I think the fans told you what happened, Jerry.
Well, you're exactly right. Not only did the fans tell me, I went in the back, watched the little replay, and it's as obvious as the nose on your face, Lance, exactly what happened. Doug Gilbert, what's the deal, huh? What's the deal with Doug Gilbert coming out, and I got a title match with Tommy Rich? Doug Gilbert comes out with a chain and wins it for Tommy Rich. I want to know, Doug, are you man enough to come out here and try to explain your actions? You come out here in front of everybody. You want to be Mr. Big Fan Favorite. You want to shake hands. You want to high five everybody. Then you want to hit somebody with a chain when their back's turned. Why don't you come out here, Doug Gilbert? Explain just exactly what's going on.
Yeah, here he comes. Now let's keep it down to just conversation here today. I know you want to know what he had on his mind. Why?
Lawler, I've got a lot on my mind, and for the last 4 days, I'm sure you know what I've had on my mind. It's all been you. It's all been you. Because of you, I lost my USWA tag team belts today.
Because of me? What are you talking about?
You know what I'm talking about, Jerry Lawler. Don't sit out here. You might be in front of all these fans, and you want to think you're such a good guy. You're not. You know what you did, and it's better that me and you talk about this back here, and we don't talk about it out here.
Yeah, I told you, Gene.
Yep, there it is.
Let me just say this. I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know what you've been doing last night, but maybe your brain ain't exactly right. I think you're talking out of your rear end because your head would know better. What are you talking about? I got no clue. How did I cause you to lose your tag title?
Let me tell you how you caused me. I'm sick. I'm fed up to here with you, Lawler. And what that is about. A guy called you. They're having a first anniversary show memorial for my brother in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Jerry Lawler. And he called you and he asked you, said, King, could you come on up here and be on this show? What did you tell him, Jerry Lawler? See, it ain't what you did. It's what you won't do. See, you try to tell all these people, you're the big king, which I give you respect and I give you credit. And I told you about 2 months ago, I would stand in line and I would wait till you was through. And then,
see, Gene, I was supposed to be getting a title shot around that time.
Jerry Lawler.
Okay.
You're
All
not
right.
half of the man I thought you was. You won't do nothing that you say. You don't. Me and my brother did so much for you, Jerry Lawler, and I guess you just seem to forget what me and my brother did for you, I guess, huh, King?
So that's what this is all about.
That's what it's all about, and I'm telling you right now.
Wait a minute. Oh, stop right there. Let me tell you something, okay? Let me do a little telling around here. Yeah, a promoter did call me from Philadelphia. And he tells me they're having a big extravaganza. It's a memorial for Eddie Gilbert. But why don't you tell everybody who that promoter is? Well, maybe everybody won't know who he is, but I sure as hell know who he is. His name is Dennis Carluzza. Do you remember that name? Or do you remember everything you and your brother did for me? Do you remember who Dennis Carluzza is? He's a shyster from Philadelphia who a few years ago came down here and made my life miserable by trying to claim to everybody that I had a couple of illegitimate kids running around Philadelphia. That's the same Dennis Carluzza that is promoting this big show,
Dennis
memorial for Eddie Gilbert. So, no, I don't care about being on that, but let me tell you this, Doug.
No, you let me tell you something. Like I said, you must not remember nothing. You must not, you're talking about, I must be stupid or my memory's bad. No, your memory's bad. You think back about 13 years ago, everything my brother did for you, everything I did for you. And then what are you going to do in return? What are you going to do? You going to run the WWF or are you going to go home?
He didn't like that, did he?
Walnut Road and sit at your house.
Let's say this right now, Doug Gilbert. You want to talk about everything you and your brother did for me? Why don't we talk about everything you and your brother did to me? You want to talk about that? Let's talk about somebody's memory being good. My memory's real good, Doug Gilbert. I remember everything that you and your brother ever did to me. I remember right out here in the parking lot of this television station one day when your brother Eddie slammed me through the windshield of a car. I remember another time when I won a car and your brother Eddie came out with a baseball bat and busted the windshield out while I was sitting in it and glass went in my eyes. But let's top it all off. I'll tell you something I remember. You ought to remember this. You were sitting right beside him right out here in the parking lot when you and your brother were in a car and he ran right down the parking lot and ran over me and could have killed me. And you think he cared? Did you care? Let's talk about the stuff that you did to me. No, I'm not going to be on no memorial show for Eddie Gilbert, and I ain't making no apologies about it. Do you understand that?
Will you let me tell you one thing? Wait a minute. You know, Jerry Lawler, of all these stinking people's always been behind you. Y'all be behind me, man. If it wasn't for you stinking people, he wouldn't even be here. It wouldn't be for you know guys like Doug Gilbert, myself, and Eddie Gilbert. You wouldn't be here. It's guys that helped you out, that helped you make a name. Hey, if it wasn't for us and all these people, you wouldn't even be here, Jerry Lawler. Hey, the bottom line is, whether you or these people, either one, think this man's right, I think he's 100% right, Lawler.
That's fine. Tommy Rich, because I know the way both of you think. I don't forget stuff. And I don't forget what Eddie Gilbert did. I don't forget what you did, Tommy Rich. I don't forget when I had a match against Austin Idol with my hair at stake. It was a lowlife named Tommy Rich who hid under the ring. Hid under the ring for 6 hours. You hid under the ring for 6 hours. And when they put up the cage and the match started, who came crawling out like a snake? Tommy Rich. And I got my head shaved. I thought about you every day for about 6 months. Hey, and it was you and Austin Idol who took my legs and pulled me into that ring post, Tommy Rich. And I had to have surgery. And I think about you and your brother every single day.
And you ought to think about it because it's your guilty conscience of what you did. See, you remember everything. That's because you're a dinosaur and times are changing.
I remember everything, and I'm going to remember today, too. I'm going to remember the little trick you pulled today, and don't think you've heard the last of the king on it, okay?
You're talking about the fact that it was on. From behind, Doug Gilbert rattles Lawler as Rich and Gilbert
there's a
are
pile
out
drive
here.
coming up here,
Lawler
aren't
out
there?
by
I believe
himself.
so.
Oh, boy. Nail Lawler down. Yeah, that's the kind of attitude that tells everybody that you hadn't changed a bit. Oh, now don't do it. Pile driver right here on the studio floor.
I bet you remember that, King, don't you? Hey, you remember that?
Come on, Richard. Lawler knocked out. We're going to take a break and see if we can get somebody get in here. Oh, God, get these guys out of here and let's help Jerry.
But that's what you was talking about, G, about when I talk about segments and exciting, and you go back to the old entertaining and heat part of wrestling. To me, that right there is it. And in those days, that was 96, right?
Yes, 96.
In 96, how many do you remember any promos? I mean, just straight promos like that. Like I said, there was no. Oh, that was 6 or 7, 8 minutes or so, wasn't it? Something like that.
Right at 8 with the whole thing.
And there was nothing. I mean, none of that. That was just us. That was us going out there and Lawler talking and me talking. And I mean, but it was about a real thing that happened, and it was a real show in New Jersey that Dennis Corleone, which that's what I was just saying. I don't think you probably didn't ever get the pleasure to meet Dennis. Dennis was a great guy, and he come down here and he brought with one of the like fan conventions. One time he come down here, then he come down 2 or 3 other times and done the deal which Lawler was talking about, the illegitimate kid deal. He done that, and I thought that was cool. But Dennis was a great guy. He was one of my friends. I'd go up north like for a year to a year and a half every weekend, and I'd work for him. And my brother went up there a bunch too and worked for him. That's where my brother worked with Cactus a lot and for Dennis and everything. But Dennis was a great guy. Just so many different things just in that interview. But not everything in it, we didn't talk about it. But I mean, everything in it was real. I mean, it was personal. I mean, it was personal to me. It was a show for my brother. I mean, if people can't see that, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you're telling a story, but everything involved in the deal was straight up, and it was happening at the time. So, I mean, there's just that interview. I think there's a lot of stuff like that we did. And I mean, it's personal. I mean, and people can see that it's personal. And I think we'd say, with personal angles, just funny. We didn't think funny was no money, and we thought being personal and serious that you would draw money and people would look at you as being serious, and that's what we wanted.
So,
how was you looking at it in those days?
So in 1996, I'm in college. I'm just starting to, figure some things out about wrestling, starting to learn some things, and so I realized that, okay, wrestling's a work, but I don't know exactly how all this works. I don't know what's, known beforehand or whatever. And I'm kind of trying to pick these things out. So I'm watching this interview unfold. And like I say, I'm pretty blown away by this show so far because I was a fan of you guys. I was a fan of PG-13 and Lawler, of course, was one of my favorite wrestlers growing up. And so I was pretty invested in this whole show because, like I say, it's a freaking roller coaster up to now, right? It's like we're all over the place. And so, you guys are out there and you start saying some things, and I'm like, that sounds pretty legit. Like, I don't think this is wrestling stuff right here. Like, I think this is getting a little, and I'm sure that's the desired effect. And so, I'm like, all right, this isn't, there's some reality to this, but it's still wrestling. But when it went off the rails for me, when I'm like, what is happening right now, is when Tommy comes out and Tommy goes, that was fake, man. That was fake. I'm like, holy, whoa now. Well, that's what I'm curious about is, I know you said y'all didn't setting this up. So to pull the curtain back, this may be further than you're comfortable with, but what was like, all right, we're going to go out here and set this matchup for Monday night. So what had been said? Like, how shocked is Lawler that you guys are saying some of this stuff?
Well, what was said, and this shows how much, I say what was said, but this is as little that was said, was the thing I'd said to before Lawler went out. He said something, he would call me out, and I said, okay. And he said, if you want sometime, you tell Tommy when to come out. So my thing with Tommy was, I said, look, as long as he wants to talk, we'll probably go back and forth. I said, and sometime, I said, give me a couple minutes to get my stuff in. I said, and when you see a good point, you come out. Well, then when everything's flowing good, it seems fast. When you're on live TV or when you're not even taping, when it's flowing good, it seems fast. Seems like everything goes fast. Well, that whole deal to me didn't seem like 2 or 3 minutes. Like you said, it was 8 minutes, 8 minutes or something. But like I said, everything we was talking about and the people could follow it was a real show in New Jersey that he wasn't on, and Dennis had asked him to, and he had to do something else and everything, which, if you followed that personally and you thought about it, you could see how maybe I wouldn't appreciate that. And then I said, I've been waiting in line, and what some people, if they're just now watching this or whatever, he had told me when I had come back after my brother passed away, he'd asked me something on TV, and I said, well, I'll tell you what, I said, I want a world title shot. I said, but I'll wait. I said, I'll wait in line. I'm not putting pressure on you, but I'll wait. And that's why on the promo, there's a lot of different things that said where I said, I've waited for what you said. And what I was talking about was him telling me that when he got everybody out of the way, then he would give me a title shot. So see, everything kind of, if you look back at it and you follow the TVs and everything, it all kind of makes sense and feed together. And like I said, the whole thing was personal. Look, when Tommy come out and said he agreed with me, everybody knew that me and Tommy's been tight since I was a kid. Everybody's knew the history between Tommy and Lawler, the head shave and all the history of the different matches with Tommy and Lawler, all the different matches that me and Tommy had with Lawler and or Lawler and Bryan or Lawler and Bayan, or you had Lawler had a never ending array of Lawler and Dundee. You can name the names, and me and Tommy worked with all of them during this time and everything. So it's kind of a cool interview. And like I said, it all kind of, if what we was talking about kind of made sense, because it was all, it wasn't just something we was making up. It was stuff for all of it that was going on during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why as you're going down the line, I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's true. Well, that's true.
And I mean, everything Lawler was saying, Eddie did slam him through the windshield. Me and Eddie run over him in a car. We'd done all this stuff. So everything he was saying, Tommy did hide under the ring for 6-8 hours, and they shaved his, what I'm saying? Everything that I was saying was true, but everything he was saying was true. So it's whatever opinion you want, whatever side, and, we was doing our best to make him take his side, but it's whatever side the people wanted to be on. But it was, both sides kind of telling their side. But like you said, when Tommy come out and said what he did, and when I said at the starting of it, like I told you when we started talking about this a little bit, when I said, do you think me and you need to talk about this on the air?
Right.
And Lawler sat there a second, he shook his head and said, yeah. So that's when, but just stuff like that back then in 96, you didn't see that. a whole lot. I don't think. I mean, and you still, which
No.
we was the last territory left as far as other than the big two. But I mean, I don't ever remember when the territories was still around, kind of cutting it that close, and everything.
Yeah. I mean, that's what really made it stand out to me, because there was two sides of that promo where you and Tommy are clearly, and I'm curious, like, I would love to talk to somebody who was just completely just not, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but like completely a mark as far as not smart to the business at all. If you're listening to that promo and you're saying, look at all the stuff we did for you, and somebody who knows like, well, we're referring to putting you over and working for you and
getting
and
you
building
over.
you up,
Right,
getting
right.
you over, like you said.
Drawing money.
And Lawler's referring back in kayfabe to, here's all the angles we did, and then your guys are coming back, and then finally Tommy with the coup de grace goes, yeah, but that was all fake. My only fear of watching then is I'm like, all right, that's cool, because now I'm invested, because like I want to drive to Memphis, since I'm in Booneville, Mississippi in college. Like I want to drive to Memphis to see how this plays out. Are these guys going to fight for real or what?
Right.
But at the same time, I'm like, okay, but are you in that moment? Are you going like, this is real, and everything else on this show you saw was bullshit, and everything else you're going to see after is not? This is the one thing that's real. That's the only thing that's ever bugged me about those types of promos or interviews.
What gets me, like I mean, you can be so serious and so personal, but I mean, if the segment that was right on before you is just god awful, or I mean, I don't even say awful, if it just wasn't good or something, then you go out there and you've got to hope the people hadn't turned the channel before you get there, and then you better hope like you could be as serious and get the people to believe in it, like I think we did, to get them to stay, and then through your stuff and through your promo, through your match, and then you better hope, or what we'd all better hope that was working there, was that the next thing was really good also, so those people would not turn the channel. And knock on wood, during those days, I think we had a good enough crew. Now, every once in a while, something might not have been the best, but like you said, it seemed like on this one show here, you said it seemed like there was a whole lot going on and everything. And on a lot of the shows, every segment would have good talent in it, but it might not be an angle that you would be invested in, or that the people would necessarily get into. But you got to have from on a card for something, a little bit of something for everybody. It's not everybody for me, which I mean, I guess you could say that to everybody for the king or whatever. But what I'm saying is, you want everybody to mean something, and there to be a spot for everybody, and everybody to like or hate who they want to. Dislike your heels and love your baby faces. That's the point. What we was trying to do anyway.
And I've seen pictures. I've heard it said for years, and then finally there's been pictures of it that have been put out. That Jerry Jarrett had that sign in his office that personal issues draw money, and that always, I mean, you just mentioned that a minute ago, and that always seemed to be the key for Memphis. Like you'd have some silly stuff, you'd have some comedy, you'd have your movie monsters, and things like that. But at the root of it, the thing that was going to make you come down there every Monday night was somewhere on that show, and it usually involved guys like you or the King or Tommy. Somewhere on that show, something really personal was going to click, and you're going to be like, all right, well, this other stuff's fun and games, but these guys are really mad. These guys are really going to hurt each other. We got to go see that. And I think that's what you guys did better than anybody. And your brother was great at that. I think he would have been right in the middle of this. You know what I'm saying? Like as I was watching this back, I thought, oh my God, like Eddie Gilbert would have been all over this, because we're going to talk about this at length later. But, I posted something on the Facebook of a promo from Continental where, Paulie Dangerously says, I'm not talking Paulie Dangerously to Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. I'm talking Paul Heyman to Thomas Edward Gilbert Jr. And that's in 1988 at 11 years old. That's the first time I'd ever heard Paulie's real name. And it was certainly the first time I had heard Eddie's full proper name. And I was like, whoa, and then of course the other little subtle thing that I didn't get for a few years is He says that, and suddenly Nightmare Freddy is out. He leaves, and
Right.
a few years later, when I realized who Nightmare Freddy was like, oh my God, that's layered. Like, that's pretty deep. Like, he makes this thing personal with him and Eddie. His brother walks out, and there's this whole other layer that if you know, you know, and if you don't, you're intrigued at least. And
Right, and it's
right along those lines.
That's it, and like I said, and I think you just said it like you said. If it was, some of us doing it, or pretty much, and if I wasn't here, if Tommy wasn't here, and 90% the King was here, but the people you saw doing the personal stuff, I'd say 95 to 100% of the time, the people bought it and believed in what they was saying, and that's what it took to draw money. I mean, it took your personal issues. I mean, but like I said, you got to have a little something for everybody. Maybe some folks want something a little funny or whatever, but as far as your money, people wanted something personal. I mean, people wanted to be able to interact and be able to see and believe what they wanted to. And during those days, I mean, you had your people that would say, oh, we will, whether we watched WWF, WCW, whatever it was, you still had your diehard USWA fans, and they watched on Saturday morning, and they wanted to believe. If you would give them a reason to believe, they would. And I mean, it was just there were certain ones of us that I guess could do it a little better. My brother was great. I mean, like I said, my brother had a super mind, and I mean, working wise, he could work as good as anybody. I mean, he was really good at what me and you're talking about here, as far as like some promos I saw him do. Like one of the promos I think you showed last week that he come out and did. To me, all this kind of goes back to the same thing, which me and Tommy was doing it for Monday night, and like I said, for the loop and for the TV and everything. And Eddie cut a few promos, and it was personal, and it was what he was thinking. Now, maybe some of them that some people didn't agree with, but what I'm saying, it would still draw money if you was there to work and carry it out.
And that's the thing. No matter who on the other side of that curtain may not have been happy with what exactly was said, they couldn't deny that this is going to draw money. We got to go with this.
Right. It's hard to go against if the people are with it and everything. I mean, you might get, and I might a few times got said, well, why? What are you thinking? What, Doug? You're a businessman, right? And I'd say, yeah, it's business. I think it'll draw, but I mean, it's like I said, you can't go. Well, I say that, but you can't go too far. You don't need to. And there's a little bit of a line, but we had a whole lot of leeway during those days. I mean, and you can look at a bunch of the different shows and a bunch of the different stuff that we done and everything. And like I said, but I think that interview there is a really cool way to show what you can do. And I mean, like me and Lawler going back and forth, and what he was saying to me, I mean, like I said, it was all stuff that had been done. When I was saying him was stuff that what I thought, what he was saying to Tommy was, you could follow all of it.
Yeah.
And it all was like a personal, like if you had somebody you didn't like, or if it was a friend that had done bad stuff to you or something, I think everybody could relate to what was being said. And I think that's a big thing in the business.
And even the kind of the personal, even the kind of the line he said where, I don't know what you were doing last night, but even that's a personal shot, the implication of that,
Exactly. And that was what I started to say, something I want everybody to hear what he was saying. So I didn't want to talk too much over him or myself while we was talking during that promo, but all the stuff, if people listens to 90% of his stuff there during all those lines, it's stuff that means something. It ain't just him talking. And I've always tried to take that into my stuff too, and it's because you've only got a certain amount of time. When you're with some guys, you're going to have a little bit more, but which I always was real fair with myself and with Tommy. And I mean, usually, like you said, as far as we was in angles to draw money for the Coliseum or for the Louisville Gardens or for Evansville or something, so you've got to have time you've got to at least have a chance to do it. So they knew if they didn't give you a chance, it was on them. So they always was fair with us and give us a chance. But I think we put out a lot of good TVs and a lot of good house shows with that.
Well, I think a real testament to what you guys did there is to this day, you can be at conventions or things like the Fan Fest in Jonesboro that we were at, and you can talk with fans. And to this day, fans still believe, because there's an element of truth to it, that Lawler and the Gilberts didn't get along, that Lawler and Dundee really didn't get along. And they'll still go like, I know wrestling's a work and I know this and I know that, but man, those guys, that stuff was pretty personal. Like him and Dundee really don't like each other. And man, Lawler and the Gilberts, they really didn't get along because, Eddie wanted Jerry's spot and then Doug followed suit. And so to me, the fact that you guys have kept them guessing all the way to now, 2024, people are still talking about that. And pick whatever TV you have access to, put you and Jerry Lawler on TV, and in another 8-minute promo, probably 5 if that's all you had, you guys can make them believe that you guys hate each other and that tomorrow night or Monday night or whenever it's going to be, you're going to kill each other.
Hey, Gene, you would laugh, and I don't know that you've seen this, but it's something people can go on YouTube and look at. Now, I've seen it. People have sent me different things of it. It's a show. Do you remember when Jerry had, I think it was called Jerry the King Lawler? It was like maybe it's called Classics or something. Do you remember when he had that?
Jerry Lawler's Classic Memphis Wrestling or something to that effect. Yeah.
I was like the second person that they asked to be on it. And man, it wound up being, like you said, they told me it was a really big watched show out of all of it and everything. Like I said, I just said, we went back and forth for like 40 minutes, but it's some great stuff to watch. And I mean, I just said he said what he wanted to, and I said what I wanted to. It went this way and it went that way, but I grabbed the unified belt, and I said, "This is the belt my brother beat you for, ain't it?" And he said, "No," and he grabbed it back and he said, "That's the AWA World Title." It was the belt that he had there. And he said, "Yeah, your brother won the unified." I said, "He beat you for the unified world title." But we went back and forth, but the people really that was taping and everything, they really liked it, and they said it was one of the most watched ones. But like you said, you give some time and everything, and you can, I think a lot of it too, Gene, is like, I mean, me and you sit here and talk, I think if you got chemistry with, if you've been around somebody and you've spoke with them and talked to them and know kind of how they're going to be, and they kind of know how you are, you can, like Lance was great with everybody. I mean, I don't even recall a person. I'm sure there's a person or two Lance might not have liked the interview or whatever, but like Lance Russell, he was great. With Shane, just come on I was on a virtual signing the other night, and Shane come on there, and I told him hello. He'll be in Jackson September 21st to the show that we're going to be at.
Yes, I hope everybody comes and checks that out. And we are definitely be talking more about that in the coming weeks, this big Memphis Hall of Fame show in Jackson September 21st.
Hey, Gene, you was talking about talent that day that was on TV, just the talent, which I mean our crew, and like you said, Rock and Roll was there with us that day, so it was our crew, maybe plus a couple and everything. But when we do start talking about the show in September or something, man, what and I know you've done talk to the guys putting it on and something, man, there's gonna be a ton of talent at it, aren't there?
I'm so excited to get to this thing, man. We're gonna be there promoting the podcast, this podcast, the USWA podcast. But the fan in me, I'm super excited to get to see a lot of these guys I've never had a chance to meet before. So to get a chance to shake their hand and meet them will be great.
Well, you'll get to meet them, and it's a who's who. I mean, just what I've heard now. Now they're still booking this thing. But just what I've heard now and of what I know, it's going to be a who's who of wrestling and everything. And me and you'll get to sit around and sit around and talk with a lot of guys. And I don't want to do a little recording there that night. And there's a few guys that from my past and me getting started in the business that are going to be there and everything. That'd be a cool deal.
It's out there. We're not going to go into it now because this podcast will get real long real quick, but you are going to actually be inducting someone into the Memphis Hall of Fame, a guy that was your tag team partner. Like I said, we're not going to get into who it is right now, but when I found out that he was going in the Hall of Fame and when I found out you were inducting him, man, I was super excited. I love this guy. He's such a great guy, such a great wrestler, and it's going to be fun.
Hey, he's great, and it's one of the things, and I mean, I ain't got to say his name or not, but one of the things somebody was asking me the other night, because I knew what a lot of people ask me about when I say tag team stuff, that they always go back. It's always me and Tommy, which I mean, me and Tommy was tag team for years too. And I love being partners with Tommy, and we had great times, great matches and everything. But this guy, they wanted a question that people wouldn't. They said, was there a question? I thought maybe people about my career that people might not know the answer to. And I said, well, I'm sure there's 3 or 4. I said, I'd have to probably think about it a little bit, though. I said, just right off the top of my head. I said, well, one, I said that might be a little bit difficult. I said, well, people probably get. I said, who was the first person that I ever won the USWA tag titles with? Which I knew what I would get because me and Tommy won them 5 or 6, 7 times, whatever it was. But that guy is who I'm inducting into the Memphis Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. So to me, that was real cool. And that was at a young age still for me. So that was a cool deal. And I traveled with this guy a lot and learned a lot from him.
And we hope to get him on the show here between now and then. But like you said, even if we don't manage to get him on the podcast, we'll definitely record with him that night.
Well, we can do that. But I told him that I wanted him on here, and he said, no problem, buddy. So
awesome.
I don't think it'll be that hard to get him. And he's got stories and stories. Like I told you, I mean, there's just, as far as, the thing, Gene, that people don't think about, they just look at when we're in the ring. Well, we got to get from home to the arenas, to the venues, and then we're at the venues for 3 hours, 2 or 3, 4 hours at times, and then we go to the ring and wrestle for 30, 40, 50 minutes at times, and then we come back, and then you got the whole story and what some of the stuff,
right.
Some of the stuff that actually happens during these times, and when we're cutting promos before the matches, and when we're cutting promos, like, a lot of times at the Coliseum after the matches. When we got done, we would cut promos in after we're done. Either, I mean, we could have blood all over us or not, but we've just come out of the ring and went to the back, and Lance is done at the ring, and he'd come to the back, and we do promos for Louisville and Nashville and Evansville. And, a lot of that, the people never know the stories of, but that's some of the coolest stuff that, that I think that people, in which I'll laugh, like me and Tommy would talk about it a lot, like a lot of the funny stuff and the stuff that people don't know. And like you said, as far as what the people think and everything. But I mean, like that interview that me and you just listened to, I mean, man, I love that. And I think it's cool when you can get everybody to buy into everything that you're doing. And to this day, people still watches it and still talks about it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad we got to talk about it because, like I said, it's something that's always fascinated me, and I really wanted to talk to you about it. And before we go, we're kind of against the wall on time here, but I always want to squeeze in at least one fan question because the fans have been great about sending you questions that they want to answer for. So I've got a couple here that I think would probably be lengthy. So this one may be sort of a short answer, but this is from Dakin Duncan from our Facebook page. He would like to know, why were you never in Smoky Mountain Wrestling?
Man, I was asked a couple times about going, but you got to realize every time that I was asked, but it was while I was still working in this territory in the USWA. That's why it was still going on. But, they would run shows, and a couple of our guys, like I think PG went up there and worked against their tag team champions. Tommy wound up going up there when he left from here and worked for them till they closed down. But I was asked a couple of times but there was always shows here. So to me, I had told Randy Hales at one time, and I think he'll tell you this, well, always keep me here and keep me is it wasn't so. I think I might have used the words close to home, or I said I had rather be, if you got to send 2 or 3 guys, because it was doing angles, interpromotional angles, I said, let them go and let me and whoever it is. And the cool thing was, you knew Lawler was always going to stay here. So I knew, if they sent half of the other card, at least you still have Lawler, and I could be here to work against him, or I'd have somebody else to work against, but I'd always be here. And that was kind of one of the things, which, I mean, that might be silly, and maybe I should have went on there or something for a night or 2 or anything, but it just wasn't anything that really, I guess, interested me that much and everything.
Plus, if you're not from the area, if you live far off and you just hear Memphis, Tennessee, Knoxville, Tennessee, well, it's in the same state. Geographically, Tennessee is wide. So Memphis and Knoxville are far apart. You could go states away and be closer than if you were going from Memphis to Knoxville. So that's a big factor as well.
I was going to say, I mean, me and you can jump from Mississippi to Tennessee to Arkansas in an hour. It'd take us freaking for you to get to my house, it'd take 2 hours. For you to get from my house to Nashville, it's another 2 hours. For you to get from Nashville to Knoxville, you're another 2.5 hours. So not saying I hadn't been on a lot longer trips than that, but it's one thing when the territory was like it was and you was kind of used to it here. And like I said, but by all means, it wasn't the easiest territory in the world. Like I said, I'd heard Jerry Stubbs and them talk about him, which I told you on the last podcast about how great a worker he was. He said he loved the Florida territory because, what'd you say, the trips wasn't but an hour and a half. You'd be at home every night in Florida and you'd be on the beach every day. And which, everybody's got their reasons and everything. But I mean, we just, I guess we thought we was doing everything the right way, or hope it was anyway.
Well, I'd say it worked out. So, I don't think your life would be any more enriched if you'd have had a couple of matches in Smoky Mountain back in 93, 94.
Well, no, I don't think so. Because unless I'm mistaken, I think like Tommy's last month there, they were supposed to work like 18 days, and I can't even remember. And this is not in my forte anyway. But the money guy is like a rock and roll guy or something. Was
Rick
the
Rubin.
one? Was that who it was?
Yep, that was the bankroll.
Yeah, and wasn't he a rock and roll guy from California or something?
Yeah, big time music producer.
Now, he was a producer? I didn't know. I'd heard it one time. It was like one of the bands or something. But see, that shows you know more than I do about a lot of this behind the scenes stuff. I can tell you the wrestling stuff, business stuff. You probably know more than me. But I mean, I never ask. I just the word I got was it was a band, a producer or band guy or something from California. And he was really rolling some money through there. Now I think they was really spending some money by the sounds of it back then. But like last month, they was supposed to be open. I think they were supposed to have like 18 shows one month. Maybe it just kind of closed or something. I'm not sure. I'm going by, I think, what Tommy told me, because he was there at that point.
I think Tommy's probably still waiting on a couple of checks from those days. From what I've heard.
I think so, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I laughed at this because somebody was trying to tell me a story about it. And Tommy was with me. I said, and they was telling me a whole different story. I said, well, tell him this story here, because if I'm not mistaken, Tommy was the heavyweight champion, wasn't he, when they shut down?
Yeah.
And that person was telling me some kind of total different story and something about I wasn't there, so to me, it's not my business. But Tommy was there, so I'd say he knows what happened and everything.
That may be a future dangerous conversation I know we got to get Tommy Rich on here at some point. So,
I'm
kind of banking some questions for when we have him here. That may be one.
Oh yeah. You need to make sure and come up with some questions for Tommy, because he's around quite often, and we'll sure have him on here and get his outlook on a few things.
Oh, I've got plenty. I'm a huge Tommy Rich fan, just like I am a fan of the Gilberts and Lawler and everybody else. So yes, I'm looking forward to when that happens. But all right, Doug, it's been a great episode too. I think everybody's going to enjoy this show just as much as they enjoyed episode 1. And next week we're rolling on to 3.
Hey, I just want to tell you, hey, thanks, Gene, and hey, thanks everybody for watching. I'd like for everybody to tune in, and I appreciate everybody that's watching and or listening. And like I said, we'll see you next week. Peace, everybody.
This is Wrestling Nostalgia, the podcast that dives into wrestling history. Hey, wrestling fans, I'm Dave Dynasty, and if you enjoy podcasts that are knowledgeable and history-driven, then Wrestling Nostalgia is for you. With great guests and fun interviews, there are over 200 episodes in our archives. We chat with several first-time guests and often cover topics not discussed on other podcasts. Look up Wrestling Nostalgia on your favorite podcast platform and visit all of our links at linktree/wrestlepod. That is linktr.ee/RASSLEPOD. And remember, wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.